To discuss transforming the talent management in a new reality, we have an esteemed panel who brings with it enormous knowledge and understanding from talent acquisition to the development to their retention. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our celebrated panelists. Let's begin with Mr. Rakesh Patel, the Vice President and Group Head HR of the Eques Group of Companies, Scanpoint Geomatics Limited, COVRIZE IT Solutions, and Blackston. With over 2 decades of working across diverse industries and closely with the leadership teams in successfully driving people's agenda across development, coaching, strategic planning, and business process improvisation. An inborn trainer, facilitator, counselor, and coach, he is a perfect blend of sales and human behavioral proficiencies and has managed the training and engagement effectively, along with establishing an organization's value system and people management competence. Beyond the professional life, Rakesh is an avid reader and a canvas painter. Welcome to the panel, sir. Let's meet our next panelist now, Mr. Sanjay Kumar, the Chief Human Resource Officer at APAR Industries Limited, responsible for the organizational strategic plan, design, and execution of the company, along with the business units through the implementation of HR strategies and solutions that support short and long-term business objectives. Sanjay is a prolific writer in prominent newspapers, research journals, Forbes, and other magazines. Apart from being a speaker at various HR forums and webinars, he has been a panelist on television shows like Bloomberg and CNBC TV 18. He has been presented with the citations 101 Top HR Minds in 2019, Sustainable HR Leaders in 2020, and Topmost HR Leaders during the year of 2022 by World HRD Congress, besides many other accolades. Sanjay has been regularly leading campus recruitments in premier management institutes such as IIM Ahmedabad and Bangalore, ISB Hyderabad, Delhi School of Economics, NMIMS Mumbai, and FMS Delhi. We are absolutely elated to have you for the discussion, sir.
Thank you, Piyali, and good afternoon to all. Thank you for your kind words.
Piyali, thanks for your kind words. Sorry, I was on mute, so I could not speak at that time.
Absolutely, sir, my pleasure. And I am now equally eager to introduce our esteemed moderator today for this panel. She is very dynamic, Ms. Gaurika Tandon. Gaurika has experience in running the HR interventions across multiple geographies, including India, US, APAC, MEA, and has been able to develop a deep understanding of various cultures and related human capital needs. Currently, Gaurika is the head of talent management and learning and development at Bennett and Coleman and Company Limited, responsible for formulating and driving the capability agenda, employee communication, and engagement initiatives, which covers more than 6,500 colleagues. She is a certified coach and a diversity and culture facilitator, and strongly believes that learning is an ongoing process and an upward learning curve is essential for the growth. Welcome, ma'am, and over to you.
Thank you, Piyali. Thank you very much, and a good afternoon to everybody. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And before we start off, congratulations to all the winners who got their citations and today. Plus, best of luck to others who are still waiting for the coveted awards that follow. So today, Piyali, when you were talking about the topic, I think it's a very, very pertinent topic today. And there are 2 words which really stood out in the entire conversation today. We're talking about transformation in talent management, transformation for talent management in the new reality. I think clearly there are 2 pieces to this. One is transformation as a word, and the other is new reality. And I think new reality we've talked a lot about, and we'll get to hear a lot more perspectives today from the panel. But transformation itself, to me, is an abused word. And, you know, I was reading the other day that a butterfly is not a better caterpillar. It is actually a transformation. So while we're looking at transformation, we need to be very careful where we're talking about incremental versus disruptive, and transformation literally would mean something that changes permanently, and it changes for better in many ways. So the same rule probably will also apply to talent management and talent in particular, which is the H in human resources. So actually, to kind of start the conversation, Sanjay, if I can ask you to come in, the first thing that we really want to talk about in talent management is actually the word talent. So do you think that in the way the world of a business has unfolded, do you really see that the definition of talent has changed? Are there new talent pools, new ways of looking at talent, and short-lived or long-lived? Should we even chase the change?
Thank you, Gaurika. So I will quote the legendary HR leader, K. Kumar, who was the CHRO for ICICI Bank. And this was about 12 years back in one of the conferences I was attending. So I think he made a pertinent point, just to go in the backdrop to understand the definition of talent in the new reality. So he had made a pertinent point that when we looked at the employees and the hiring process, which is called talent acquisition, talent management, there are a lot of mundane, routine, transactional jobs, which are extremely important, but whether they really need some talent is the question he raised. Now, processing, data processing, and also that's what his question was. We are not dealing with some guitar players, with kuchipudi dancers, with pace bowlers who are, iconic, or any other kind of author, novelists. So is it really talent? So it is more about the role and work. As the last 1 decade has passed, I think things have really changed, and particularly in the context of COVID, what we have witnessed is a sea change. Today, I would say really it is talent. It is no longer just the routine work. It's really become talent today, because what is important other than functional and routine and limited behavioral competencies to perform a task and to do well and then excel in a role is resilience. The demands today are so much more on how much resilient as an employee I am today, how much of emotional quotient, how is my emotional quotient, my empathy, how much creativity do I have, and what is the kind of flexibility that I bring to the table, innovation. With all this, gaining more and more in the entire spectrum of the activities that I perform and the needs of the hour, I think this is really, I would say today, calling it talent is right. And this is the definition of talent today. To answer your question, Gaurika, I would say, which is pertinent. Now, also talent, because the definition also acquires a different dimension because of the kind of demand and supply challenges which are there today, if you see. So post-COVID particularly, there was a time during COVID when people were losing jobs. Today, if you look at, it's an entirely different ratio. So that is also, whenever something is scarce, definitely it is important, and it is talent. Also, because, it is also the demographic change. In one of the conferences a few days back, I was there with Chris Shankar. What he mentioned was very interesting, and later on it was seconded by the other panelists as well, by Mr. Tandon from Adani Group, who used to be with HSBC. So I think what he interestingly said that earlier, Chris Shankar, what he mentioned was that earlier people used to work for the basic needs or for their living. Later on, their next generation, the parents had already done it for them. So they were living for a standard of living, the EMIs for a home loan, for the car and other stuff. Later on, as the new generation, which is going to come now, actually, their grandparents took care of the standard of the basic needs. Their parents have taken care of their standard of living. They will more and more look for purpose, the joy of working, whether it is ethical in the context of sustainability, environment, and many other, much larger dimension. So I think that is another interesting way how to define talent today, which is going to come. Also, what is important is whether, like leaders, is talent born or is it made? So that we can touch upon, time permitting, later on. So I think it is made today, but how to make it is the question. The second aspect of your question is the new talent pools, the segments. So here, IT and the consulting companies post-COVID have really created an entirely different segment, which is of transformation. And there, I think there is a lot of hiring happening in those domains, and companies have really increased. So there, they require an entirely different set of talent segment. Also, digitization, which along with this has brought in it. So that is the other need of the hour. Startups call for a very different segment of talent. The young leaders, this young CXO who are taking on who may be inexperienced, but are being entrusted with a high level of responsibility and position. They are delivering very well also. That is the other dimension of or segment of talent. The gig work, which is started in a very nascent way and is going to certainly come up in a big way. That is the next one. And also the millennials who have started stepping into the corporate world, how to deal with them and how they would deal with. I mean, there are so many things talked about them, but we need to really learn more about them to be really able to qualify to talk about them. So that is the other segment of talent. Now, when I say it is more accentuated, this talent segments, because of if you look at some of the trends today. So the hiring trend, which really took up after COVID, right now it is going a little lesser. So whereas some companies would make 20 offers for 10 persons to hire, because that other 10 may not join. So today they are making 15 or so. The hikes, which were 50 to 100%, today have gone down to 30 to 50%. But this is not so true for the CXO level. At the CXO level, only thing which has changed is they could have had 3 to 4 offers, which has now gone down to 1 to 3 offers or 1 to 2 offers. Where it has not changed for them as well is the areas of cost management, wherever the expertise is there, of cost management, of operational excellence, and of digital and technology. So these are some of the aspects which really make it interesting. And one more point you should remember is the underprivileged children who are getting into the workforce or joining the mainstream. So that is another area segment, and which is heartening to see. Actually, I am also mentoring a lot of, along with many other people, underprivileged children. So it's really heartening to see how they're really getting into the mainstream. So the IT teams in non-tech companies in another segment. So I would stop at that, and then chasing them, whether, do we have a choice? Probably no. So yes, you can make or buy. Making, as in developing people, is easier. Making them is more difficult. So, but we should be working towards it, but we don't have a choice. So I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Sanjay. Thank you so much. I think very, very pertinent and important points you made about of what the talent needs to demonstrate today in terms of resilience, creativity, innovation, a part of that. And I really like the part about the demand and supply that you raised, because it's really true. It's true for all commodities, and even in the luxury segment. And talent today has really transitioned into becoming the luxury segment because of the war for the right talent. While you were talking whether everybody has 3 offers and 5 offers, it just means that it actually brings us to a very interesting point. And Rakesh, maybe I can come to you with this, that today, like Sanjay was mentioning, there are whole new talent pools that are coming in, and these are diverse people. These are folks, millennials, you said the underprivileged children, for example, or even for the fact that you have those demographic workforce where they're actually working for purpose. So when we have a lot of, we have an influx of the kind of talent that we have in the market, Rakesh. So attracting them would probably become a challenge. So I just think that maybe if we could get you to tell us what impact will this have on the traditional EVP, as we have called the value proposition that we take to the table. And today, in today's world, to attract this multi-generation workforce, what in your views could be a compelling EVP that we can build?
Yeah. I lost the last 10-15 seconds.
Oh, I'm so sorry. If I can just repeat what I was saying, Rakesh, I was basically trying to ask you.
The last 15 seconds.
Yeah, so I basically tried to ask you that, are there compelling elements we can include to actually craft the value proposition, the employee value proposition, to be able to attract this diverse workforce that's standing on the shore for us?
So first of all, thanks, Gaurika, right? Before I begin, let me, first set the context a little. So when I look at my own role that I manage today, I manage both the new age industry and the old age business with newer dimensions. So while I share my insights at this point in time, since the topic is more connected with the new reality, right? So I'll be focusing more on the new age industries. So rightly said by Sanjay and also seconded by you that talent definition has changed and is still further changing. Skill set requirements also has changed drastically. Newer roles, existing roles have also acquired a new perspective completely. That is what I have been able to see through. One thing which I have reckoned is that whether you buy, build, bridge, bolster, or borrow, the fact still remains that every segment of this, right, has had a nuance, right? And maybe today, if we look at the borrow part, is now perhaps gaining more momentum. So typically in majority of the technology driven industry, the business plans change and they change pretty fast. And thereby, my view always has been that one needs to have a hybrid model coexisting to work in line with the business. And lot many answers in today's world is getting answered by the alternate work plans and the future ready talent we hire and nurture along with. However, a lot further gets guided by the clarity of the business plans, even if they are short term, right, for many reasons, right, which are governing the business changes today. But obviously, value proposition, if we come to that, it has to be comprehensive and also has to change to attract the typical category which we are trying to search at this point in time. So let's pick element by element as far as the employee value proposition is concerned. So if I pick the first element of compensation, right? As I said that we need to have a hybrid model, right, of acquisition in place. With this, as I mentioned, that the roles have changed drastically. So we need to have a set of, I would say, a mixed methodology of fixed variables and a yield sharing, right, for different segments, right, in accordance. Whether it is time-based or value-based is a proposition which we have to build in line with what we are looking at, what is the kind of a supply, right, and what value is it going to bring on the table. Second, if you look at from a benefits perspective, the definition of benefits also have undergone a drastic change. So what we termed as flexibility in earlier times and what we term as flexibility today is again pretty different. So every element of benefit, essentially when we look at, so whether it is flexibility, whether it is the kind of family support right, which an employee is looking forward to, whether it is the time offs, right, which has become so very important with the current generation, because every person on the outset is first trying to understand that what is the kind of a time off that he or she is going to get at the end of the day. The infra and the system support, and this when I'm talking about again from the perspective of the new reality. So the way the world is changing, the way we are digitally transforming, the way we are approaching the so-called metaverse, right, in the times to come, infra and system support also is going to be equally important. And most importantly, from a benefit perspective, the learning opportunities which an employee has, he or she is today looking at a choice which he or she can exercise. So whether they can choose what they wish to do, right, and build their career is something which has become very important and needs to be a part of the overall value proposition which you are bringing out. Third, if you come to the cultural perspective, when we know that there is a lot of fragility, right, in the overall workforce movement that is, going on, aligning the individual's work, every person's work with the vision, right, is a very, very critical dimension. Secondly, knowing the fact that this generation today does not believe in micromanagement. It expects to know that what is in it for me, what do I need to do, right? Tell me clearly, right? And according to it, let me deliver as per the timelines that you have set. So apparently the clarity of goals and the outcome has to be a part of that value proposition again. What matters today is not just from what you are getting from a job perspective, but it also matters the environment in which you are, the influence which is getting created. So apparently the quality of leaders and colleagues is also a matter of choice today. So those days were gone where, we used to choose people, right? Now, essentially, it is the people who choose us, that whether they really wish to work, right, with us or not. And finally, the collaborative opportunities, which now have assumed importance in the kind of a remote working, space, typically what COVID has brought in front of us. So apparently, how do we collaborate? How do we engage? The meaningful interactions that we are able to do, I think that is one area which also needs to be built upon. From a career perspective, if you were to look at, then what becomes important today is not just the kind of a skill that I'm good at as an employee, but one needs to understand the alternative skills as to where, how can the person be best utilized, right, in terms of his aspirations, in terms of his areas of strength, and which is in line with what the business requirement also is. I think that is an aspect which we need to focus upon. Subsequently, we also need to look at the quality of training and the assessments, right, which typically go into, right, in the build up of their career, because that is a very strong ingredient which tells them that where am I heading forward to, and is it in line with the kind of an aspiration that I have. So that element essentially has to be inbuilt, in that proposition which we create. And finally, in terms of the work environment, there's the last piece which I'll just quickly put across. So what becomes important here again is the autonomy and the work-life balance, right? And in the scenario of new reality, when people are working at distant places, the kind of query resolutions, right, which are happening, which takes a lot of toll, right, in the employee's workability. So I think that is a part which needs to be built along with the infra support which you actually given. So that employee value proposition, to my mind, could be one which can actually compel, depending on the category of hiring that you essentially do.
Thank you, Rakesh. I think very interesting points. The four main takeaways that I really had are the 4 C's that you really, or 5 C's. You put in a choice of learning. You talked about competence of the individual, clarity in terms of the job or the milestones that we set out, context of everything, as well as the climate, which kind of brings in the purpose that Sanjay was mentioning earlier for the new generation, or how the organization connects, and therefore the employee chooses the organization. Actually, out of all of this, since we're really talking about talent and talent management today, if we can just, if I can just ask you a little more on the learning piece, which is the choice of learning, because we're really talking about talent development of sorts. So if from attraction, if we move to development, and where you were talking about choice of learning, now there is metaverse, there is augmented reality, there is artificial intelligence, machine learning, technology, disruption. We hear of all of this. Given all this context, do you think the way an organization approaches learning for itself, which is capability building of the organization becoming future fit, as well as the individual becoming more capable, is that going to be relooked?
Okay, so here, let me share one to begin with. Today, if you look at the human capital management role, right, it is a very, what is expected is that it has to be a very solution-centric role. Metaverse, the immersive, technology which you were to talk of, or the AI, ML, whatever, it seemed to have reshaped the world of work in terms of evolution of new immersive forms of team collaboration. Number one, the emergence of the AI-enabled colleagues, typically, the acceleration of learning and skills acquisition, which is more, through virtualization and gamified technologies. And the most important, the eventual rise of metaverse economy itself has brought about completely new enterprises and work roles. So from an HR perspective, the first need that I envisage is redefining the hybrid workspace. Typically, switching between the physical, remote, and virtual, it is something which we need to, manage pretty well in the given, set of reality, because all the three are going to be in coexistence. Virtual, though it is going to take a little time, but definitely it is on the cards. Second, transforming the talent acquisition piece, right? Because those days are gone when we were forging connections, on a global scale was very difficult. But today, perhaps that is something which is on the cards, which we can, move ahead with this new reality. Experiencing the, the workplace, building the quality and enhancing the overall employee experience. So that is something perhaps which, again, is a critical need from an organization. And as I already mentioned that, facilitative meaningful interactions is again very critical. I'll say a line which I've picked up from my CEO, right, who is in COVRIZE IT Solutions. So he made a very clear statement that if work has penetrated life, life also has penetrated work. So it is no longer work alone. So that's where we need to interact in novel ways, enhancing the space for valuable connections, right? And in an immersive virtual office, whether it is the health check-ins or the team building or the fun Fridays or whatever you talk about, right? All begins to approach the more organic, familiar, feel in person, right, work. We also need to understand that the kind of the learning and development experiences that we are now giving. So educating and upskilling through real life scenarios, the invaluable experience of employees. This is going to be again another critical dimension which we have to look at. And with no physical boardroom or workshop, right? the laser focused sessions actually will also help the organization in the longer run to cut the cost at the end of the day. So maybe that is something also which we can build on. And last but not the least, on this dimension, the evolving, how do we do business? This is a critical piece. So businesses today have to be made boundaryless in this kind of a scenario. Building entrepreneurship in the true spirit, not just in the name that I'm making you the CEO of an organization, but the fact that you are an entrepreneur, right? And you are going to take the charge of it is a very critical area which we further need to look at. And to provide value perspective, irrespective of whether it is the place, size, language, etc. So this, to my mind, is the perspective which we need to begin. But again, a very critical trait of human capital leader today would be to anticipate and understand this rapid change across and swiftly act fast on it. Create a short and a long-term strategy, both, which can persuade others also to adopt the kind of a change which we are wanting to do. Keeping in line that the customer experience and the employee experience is going to be critical. Finally, in terms of, if I also were to look at from some core competency perspective, the core competencies have to be built in line with the upskilling and the recruitment, the needed talent with the newer roles. We need to review approaches to data and business relationships. So our competencies have to be built on that. Accelerating our services of digital platform in using and building security of the infrastructure. And most importantly, on the softer side, enhancing the element of trust. Because this is going to be very, very vital in the times to come, right? Because it is no longer a one-way process, right? Today, the employees essentially are going to choose, those people, right, where they see that, the trust is building in, typically. So, to my mind, the organization capability and the individual capability building essentially has to, in this new reality, has to have these dimensions which we need to look at. Then perhaps we will be able to evolve clearly, if not a strong long-term strategy, for sure a short-term strategy which we can use that time to build that long-term strategy as well and make a difference.
No, thank you, Rakesh. I think very interesting points of redefining the hybrid workspace, making sure that that we have a solution mindset with all the other traits. But quite interestingly, talent is a pyramid. And you did talk about the entrepreneurship that we really need to have in individuals so that they're able to build businesses, make them boundaryless, make them seamless. Sanjay, if I can extend this question to you. So now when we're talking about making the organization fit, we're actually talking about a talent pyramid, where we're talking about the tip of the pyramid. The tip of the pyramid are actually the leaders who will take the organization to that path. What in your view is actually that trait that will make leaders of tomorrow?
Yeah, interesting. And thank you, Gaurika. Thank you, Rakesh. Very insightful observations. So I think the leaders, I would rather like to quote from, to begin with, from the HBR, the Harvard Business Review article, which was published recently in the last edition. So what they really mentioned was that now you need, all the more so you would need leaders who are not only operationally strong, who are not only financially very strong. These have been the two indices till now, the criteria. But new leaders who are able to motivate diverse, technologically savvy and global workforces and can rapidly and effectively apply their skills in a new company, in an unfamiliar industry. So I think this ties in quite a bit with what Rakesh has mentioned also. So I think these are some of the areas where the new leadership is something. The new leaders have far more empathy, much better emotional, social skills. Their EQ is very high. I mean, financially, being strong and operationally, administratively being strong is hygiene now. But what really matters is to understand the ecosystem, to quick and to be very fast and flexible in the line of sight which they have, how that itself is changing, and to align with the talent pool that you have, the talent skill sets, competencies, and how quickly that alignment happens, and realignment and reskilling and re-education all happening. So you're assembling the car and also driving it at the same time. So that is what the skill really is today, which is extremely important. The leaders of today would not obviously appraise their team members only at the end of the appraisal cycle. They will more so have more and more of performance coaching. They will need to definitely understand the personal and professional challenges, strengths, scope, potential of all the team members and the lateral people, stakeholders whom one is dealing with. I think that has become extremely important. And the other thing which is there is it's no longer confined to executive presence or business etiquette or executive presence. What is the team collaboration is really extremely important, and how having poise under pressure. That is the other thing which is very important. Whatsoever be the situation, one doesn't lose one's poise, at least to a certain extent. And I think these are some of the abilities, unlike the leaders of yesteryears who could have been really, and of course, I would say the servant leadership concept, which has been there, will be more and more. So leaders will be merely facilitators, because there are very capable team members. So they don't need to be really, the task management will become less, and inspiration part, guidance part, breaking the mold, that will become more and more important, and take more of the role of the leader. The leader certainly has to also transform. So initiative interventions like high potentials, the assessments of them, and then working on them, grooming on them, uncovering the hidden potential, how to change the potential energy into the kinetic energy, like a dam, the water on the dam standing, and when it is potential energy, and when it comes to the turbine, and then electrical impulse is generated. So the kinetic energy, those are the things which will really matter, which uncovering potential which the team member herself or himself does not know exists. That is the insight of the leadership, hallmark of leadership. Coaching, I've already mentioned. Mentoring will be more, and leaders will gradually be more focused on becoming career architects for their team member. They will not depend on HR to do it for them. HR will they are just defining the rules of the game. The game is being played by the line managers and leaders. So they will be extremely good career architects, and they would be also working on succession planning, ensuring that there is never a gap between what is being said and what is being done and what is to be delivered. So I think these are some of the traits, Gaurika, I think the new age leader will need in the constant flux of corporate affairs, the business environment that is happening.
Thank you, Sanjay. I think very interesting points. I think, yes, assembling a car and driving it too, that's what most of us have been doing for so long. We are talking about poise under pressure. That itself is another very strong and a very, very deep thought. But what I really like what you were saying, Sanjay, is basically about HR being able to define the rules of the game for the players to play the game. I think that is a very, very, it's a very interesting statement. And Rakesh, you did talk about it some when you were talking. Why don't we move back in time a little, where you were talking about the rules. You had just started talking about the HR infrastructure and policy. So what kind of rules should HR really put together here for this new world of work with the new players? The policies, the infrastructure, because we are the ones who are really going to make this fabric actually, in a way, put the boundaries. So what, in your view, are these HR policies or infrastructure that we need to put in place?
Okay, Gaurika, here, before I get into the policies and infrastructure, just a couple of few points which are important as to what will necessitate these things. So as I already mentioned that companies today need to establish trust for candidates, for them to select and continue, right? The second thing which we have also seen is that we need to create a brand which can actually attract and grow naturally rather than we being in a continuous hunt process, right, of searching for people. The third thing is the clarity on job role as well as the growth path, right, to bring alignment not only on the salary but also on the vision. Creating internal entrepreneurial opportunities, right? This is something which will be very critical for us to make it happen for our people, right? Have a fair distribution of the yield, because that will ensure that they are a part of the organization. Today, perhaps what we expect in such virtual spaces, right? I think the deliveries are only going to come when they feel that this is mine. They own it, right? Unless that ownership comes in, I guess, everything that we do will somewhere lose its sanctity. Devising a structure to pay dividends on the unique skills. So maybe we'll have to very clearly differentiate that what skills and how do they need to get, paid in terms of the dividends. Continuously investing in the new talent and making the market ready. I think that is what, again, an organization would need very strongly, right? In the given understanding that we may not have enough talent or the skill set, right, available in the market. So we might have to create that on the simultaneously. We have to shift the focus of learning also from learning any skill to learning any relevant skill, which is pertinent. So I think these, and then the digital skills, which are very, very important, which we all know. I would rather say that the human capital team, right, needs to be more digitally equipped than the job seeker to be able to create a difference, right, in the organization that we are wanting to do it. Now, in the given set of understanding, we know that metaverse, on other hand, is going to break whatever physical boundaries that are there between geographies, markets, and intra-physical locations, which we talk about. So the adoption of the same in near future will need a clear plan to be set off. And that's where we need to have a very clear plan that in a short-term period, how do we ensure that people become meta-savvy? People build a meta strategy, and we are able to deploy some low-risk use cases. For example, creating virtual tour of facilities for our new people, launching some of the non-fungible tokens, right, to enhance the kind of a brand awareness which we need to do. So certain such low-risk use cases is something which we need to deploy and get ourselves in that position where we are ready for that next transformation, which is very much possible, at least for the new age industry or the technology driven industry which we are talking about. And with this having said, the policies which will become critical and in that given context would be policies on workplace safety, on well-being and inclusivity, because we will have no choice but to build, because the problematic behavior typically which are in the form of harassment or bullying or abusing in that virtual world is expected to again sprout. So in order to also mitigate that, we need to educate the employees that how do we do this and are able to ensure that such situations don't arise to a large extent. And the metaverse eventually, if you look at, opens up a lot of facilities to rethink the office and the work environment also. Because we need to introduce the element of adventure, spontaneity, and surprise. Because that is something which will again engage people more and will make them feel that they are connected. And those avenues we'll have to create. And finally, we also need to look at the hybrid working policies to ensure a healthy metaverse working practices, and also teach the leaders, right, how to lead in this new environment. So that's a critical role which again we will have to play in terms of creating the policies. But net, if I were to put it across, to sum up, the goal of the organization should be to transform employee experience up to an extent where people have an immediate affinity for the organization that they apply to, and where the self-service options, right, where they get to choose themselves, are intuitive enough. This can only be achieved through personalization at a scale, which we can build in through this, real-time automation that we do of all the HR processes, right, which are there, and most importantly, to gain the visibility further on. So that's what I feel should essentially be done, to mitigate.
Thank you, Rakesh. That really makes HR nothing but less than a magician to be able to put all of this together.
Superman, that's the word.
Superman, actually. We are like the superhuman resource now.
Correct.
We need to bring in adventure, we need to bring in stability, we need to bring in attraction. It just sounded like HR itself has to rebuild itself and reimagine itself. Actually, Sanjay, to you, a question here that, I think you ask an HR person, what were you doing in the last 2 years? And they will turn around and tell you that we were busy. We were busy doing something. We were busy with the business continuity that traditionally has never come to HR. I was listening to my own CHRO, and he once mentioned that, we've become chief sustainability officers. More than becoming chief human resource officers, we are sustainability officers, where we're actually, we became the center of the stage, where somehow safety was something we were responsible for. Business continuity we were responsible for, policy we were responsible for, attraction we were responsible for, separation we were responsible for. We were responsible for almost everything that was making business run. So to you, Sanjay, I think we've got a lot of prominence. I wouldn't say that it wasn't there, but I think it was just a refreshed, renewed prominence that the human resource function got. But going forward, assuming that now the pandemic probably is behind us, and even if it wasn't a black swan event, at least it was the gray rhino that they say, where the probabilities exist, the impact will be high. Predictability also tells us that we will get more of this. What is it that, in your view, the HR function must continue to do that we find ourselves in the spot that we've reached?
Right. So thank you, Gaurika. I think that omnipotent role is almost like God's, as you said, or not only a magician. So it's tough, but I think what it has also done during the pandemic, the situation itself has given birth to a scenario where, we HR moved from a mere seat of the table to the center of it. So now, what will, let it keep the chair out there in the center is, in a way, your question. And so I think that's very important. What is important, I think, now for HR is to ensure the specialized approach is always maintained. It is not a commonsensical HR approach which is being applied, but it's the specialization, and other professionals should also feel and functions that, hey, these guys are also, this is a specialization in itself. They bring in a difference to the table. It is not just based on commonsensical solutioning. So that is one part. I think the HR business partner model has been there for about 12 to more than 12 years now. It's a great model, but what it has also cropped up, I feel, and it's my humble personal opinion, I may be wrong, because I don't have a visual, line of sight of all the HR professionals across the globe, is that I think there is a lot of, earlier there used to be a lot of specializations, or at least wherever people have remained in the HR BP role for a long time, and they have not been shuffled to other specialized functions like L&D or C and B or the other OD or other functions or talent acquisition or any other functions for that matter, HR operations, payroll and compliance. What has happened really is that, I mean, this thing has come up a little. So the respect in the eyes of the CEO, the other CXOs, that will not be there unless this specialized approach is there to everything. And for that, there is a lot of learning, there is a lot of innovation, there is a lot of upgradation which needs to be done at all times. So that is one thing I would say. And talent mapping is certainly one of the things which keeps HR in the center stage, that what are the skill sets and competencies which are there today with us? What are, as per the business model, which is also changing all the time. So, what are the requirements and the mapping of them? That is something, if it is done, really digital can really help us there to be on top of the situation, to be on the ball at all times. So that is something which is extremely important. If one role which HR plays constantly, so that partnering is very important. The other thing I think is the business understanding by HR professionals. Things have lagged there, so there are many who really understand business. I would not say that that's a very large proportion of the HR workforce. It's also, the understanding where one may be limited. The other is that they may have good financial understanding because of their MBA, but as far as business is concerned, they may not have, or they may not have taken interest in. It's just a function of interest and involvement. So that is another thing which is very important. And then developing talent strategies become important. If you are working with an operating plan which changes every day based on the exigencies and contingencies of the business, we are followers and we are not leaders, or at least we are not partners. Leaders are not needed. I think partnering with business leaders is needed. So I think that is very important. So that talent strategies itself may not be ahead of the curve. They may not be relevant to what is needed and what is ahead of us. And we may be lagging behind. So these are three things I thought: digital, the talent mapping, business understanding, and talent strategies, and digital lacing all of these three. And so these are digitization of HR is another thing very important of the HR processes, which makes it more efficient, faster. The touch points into a chatbot today are so much more, the span is more. And employee adoption of technology and digital, I think that's really moved 5 years ahead because of the pandemic, fortunately, or that is I would not say fortunately, but one of the positive sides, things which have happened. Yet that is limited more to the Zoom calls and more to some of the SharePoints that you have to go for reimbursements. I think these are two things which I have thought have really been there as far as technology is concerned. But there is so much more which is there. So that adoption of technology, which of course now people are much more inclined on the phone, on the device. So it's all generations of people. So that's another thing which is important. HR analytics, now that's in a highly nascent stage, I would say. The recording of the data, and because AI would really also really work on the data which is recorded, the trends, the behaviors, unless you have that data really mapped up and built up that data, so what will you train the AI on? Otherwise, if you want a fad, it can be there. Will it be useful for you? Maybe, maybe not, I would say. So I think the HR analytics needs a real focused attention. And also what is important is the new reward, appreciation, retention strategies. So these are, because they are going to be the center business critical thing. So I would say these are some of the most important. The other thing which will keep us the position on the table that we have earned and at the center of it is, what are the, new paradigms. Now, what is next to ESOP? ESOP came in India. The folklore was that in Infosys, maybe in 1998, even the drivers turned into crorepattis. So as what is the new model of sharing wealth? What is the new model of retention and reward in this respect in the long run that employs? So why have we not thought about it? or have there been other tools and techniques? What is the new performance management system? Of course, there was a lot of discussion since 2015 and the annual appraisal process. However, I think it still continues in most of the companies, but it was said that it is no longer relevant. We must not have it. We must have it has been replaced by performance reviews, which are regular, which is all very good. But really, within that also, not only new, but the perfectioning of the smoothening of the process, the real adherence to the process, and ensuring justice, equity, diversity wherever it is coming, factoring in that the human touch in it. Whereas technology is important, analytics is important. What is more important, I feel, is we must not forget that we are HR professionals and our specialization in understanding of people. Anyway, and our employee advocate role is very important. So these are some of the things I think, and the understanding the new paradigm in performance appraisal, ESOP, other reward strategies. What is the new paradigm in employee engagement? Again, 2 years back, people said, of course, annual appraisal is no good. You have data real time, anytime, but that is too much of data. Is it really leading you to some, actionables? I'm not so sure on that. So these are some questions. And if we continue doing, I think, in my opinion, will definitely keep us at the center stage, because this human side of the enterprise, to quote Douglas McGregor, that was his book in the 1940s, I guess. So, that still is very, very important, and rightly so, it is at the center now. Thank you, Gaurika.
Thank you, Sanjay. Actually, really, because what you were really saying is that the HR talent also needs to build itself to be able to serve the reality, whether it is understanding technology or being the technology advocate, or being the person who brings in technology and finds a way to help create that hook or pull where people would want to use that technology. Create those engagement platforms, make sure that the purpose is aligned, individual to the organization and vice versa, to talk about understanding business, because if business is changing, business models are changing, the operating context is changing. So the individual needs to, not be short of a Superman again. So thank you very much. I think it's been a pleasure, and we're up with an hour. We could have continued our conversation, but I suppose that we are up with our time. And thank you so much. I think it was a very, very interesting conversation about how the talent transformation really advents itself in the new reality. Thank you. Thank you very much. Piali, over to you.
Thank you, Gaurika, and thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you.